Hi, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone.
Good afternoon.
We shall start any second now. Once
Okay.
the video ends and the admin could go to the screen where I get to wish everybody good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are. So welcome to the session. Okay, thanks, admin. You can pause the video now. Let me welcome everyone who just tuned in. We have quite a good crowd for today's session. Yeah, let me on my video. We have quite a good crowd from various parts of the world, from US, China, India, Hong Kong, various parts of ASEAN, not to mention Australia. I saw a couple of Australians saying hi. And of course, fellows from Malaysia and Singapore. Have I missed out any region? Probably Thailand, Indonesia. So welcome to our global session today that was designed to raise awareness on AI in the context of finance. So I have with me here a couple of very, very good speakers who will share with us their very, very good experience. Hopefully a balanced perspective, the good, the bad, the ugly side of finance, and how technology has actually helped them or empower them or enable them, or maybe put them out of their jobs. I don't know. Let's ask from them whether they were out of jobs because of technology. Yeah. So here we have a very candid session to basically understand a bit more about the applications of AI in the context of finance. Yeah. And very happy to see such a diverse crowd once again. And I would like my speakers to actually introduce themselves. I cannot do justice if they do not share their own experiences. Of course, we have Charles Chong, who will begin the show, and he will introduce himself, followed by Andrew from PKF. He's actually heading up the PKF South Africa, but he's actually based in London. Correct, Andrew? Just to test your audio at the same time.
No, that's correct, yes.
Okay, so you're in London right now. London is actually morning right now?
I'm actually based in Glasgow.
Oh, Glasgow.
And yes,
okay.
It is the morning, yes.
All right, sorry, I thought in London. So it's still in the area. Then we have Farah from Malaysia. How are you, Farah?
Great.
She has been actively in the speaking circuit for a very long time, and she is showing us the background of a living room in preparation for Hari Raya, the festivity. So you can see her house is very neat and beautiful, right? In preparation for our festivities that's coming soon, April and May. And we have Charles, and then can I see who else is online? The speakers. Miza?
Morning, afternoon. Bussy is online.
Bussy, yes. Yeah, I was trying to look for you without identifying.
I seem to be connected with my son's account. I have no idea why, but
exactly.
The beauty of technology. Yeah.
Yeah, so glad to see you here. So I was trying to look for your name without citing your name in case you're not ready. But good to see you ready with a different name. But Bussy is basically here with us away from, all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa, right? So I'm glad we have the full house here. So without much further ado, let me pass over to Charles, who will set the tone rolling, followed by Andrew, followed by Bussy, and followed by Farah, if you don't mind. So each of you will take about 2 minutes to introduce yourself, what you do, the context of what you do, and another 10 minutes or so to share your perspectives about the area of finance that you're specializing in and how you foresee the technology coming in to shape and form the kind of techniques, the kind of processes, the kind of strategies moving forward. So passing over to Charles first. Go ahead. Who will set the ball rolling with the macro perspectives?
Good afternoon. I'm Charles. I've been in banking operations and technology for the last 3 years, and I have spent focusing in software. And my last corporate experience was with Citibank, where I was the head of the software technology and sourcing. And when I left the bank, and I was into corporate finance, into commercial aircraft aviation. I was in private jets. I was in family office. product development in asset management, and currently I am focusing into venture builder in AI, and this is a space that is not new to me. During my time in Citibank, I was involved in the data analytics, data warehouse, and data centers, and all these are just part and parcel of technology. And those days we don't call it fintech, we call it just technology itself. And today I will be able to share some of my experience with you, and I hope you can take away some of the points that we shared today from personal experience. Thank you, Professor Nazri. I pass back the time to you.
Yes, thank you, Charles. How about Andrew, Busi, and Farah? Maybe quick introduction.
Okay, I think I'll go first. And hi everyone, I'm Farah from Kanzan Ventures, and we are a fund management, venture capital fund management company based in Malaysia. And my background is that I have been around 9 years in venture capital, 9 to 10 years in venture capital, and 8 years in entrepreneurship. I've actually experienced the end-to-end value chain of venture capital, from working with the GP and then succeeding to the LP and then becoming an entrepreneur myself. And currently I'm with the World Business Angel Forum, sitting on the board of committee for the startup, and then there's also the advisory member for the iPortal and World Leader Summit. So I sit on some of the boards there. Pleasure to be talking to all of you today.
Farah is very humble. She's actually the chairwoman for the investment committee of the Malaysian side, right? Of
Yes.
the World Business Angels Forum.
Yes.
So congratulations on that appointment. We look
Thank
forward to your contributions to the SME and startup ecosystem. Anyone would like to introduce themselves? Left with Andrew and Busi.
Okay, I'll go next. It's Andrew Sutcliffe speaking. My background is in governance, risk and compliance, where I've been working in the industry for a good 30 years or so. I started my life out as a chartered accountant, and over the last 2-3 years have been focused back in the accounting profession after quite a long break outside of it. Working with PKF in building and understanding how best to leverage technology for the benefit of the firm, covering a broad range of areas and looking at partnering, building, creating, leveraging where we can to enhance what it is that, one, we do internally, and two, the services that we offer our clients. So our focus is how do we and what do we do and how do we focus on, and hope to share some of that information with you during the course of my presentation. Thanks, Nazri.
Thank you. So my name is Busi Siwamati. I am
Thank you,
the
Andrew.
current chair.
Andrew is Busi. Okay, go ahead, Busi.
Sorry, Nazri.
It's okay. There's a time lag. Go ahead. Yeah. Good to go.
Busi Mati, currently the chairperson of the PwC South Africa Governing Board and a member of PwC Africa Governance Board. But my day-to-day job is really looking after cybersecurity and data privacy at PwC South Africa and the rest of the continent. And just a little bit about my background, very similar to Andrew. I qualified as a CA many years ago, therefore understanding very well what the role of an accountant is, what the role of an advisor is from a finance perspective. And in the last 6-7 years, I've transitioned into risk compliance, but mainly paying attention into cybersecurity and data privacy. And today I just want to share some insights that I've gained in my previous life as a chartered accountant, what the changes we're seeing, and what this big data we're all talking about, and algorithms and AI, just the opportunities, but equally so the risks that introduces from a cybersecurity perspective and from a data sovereignty and data privacy perspective. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Busi. Busi is one of the most dynamic, talented, and very capable lady in Africa. And she has contributed a lot, and I learned a lot from her during her maiden presentation in our AI World Summit So it was the first time we saw her in action. I personally learned so much from her during the AI World Summit in 2020. So we look forward to her continued contribution into the AI World Summit 2021. So here we are. I've not missed out anyone, right? So let's start off with Charles' presentation on how he sees the AI landscape in the context of the financial ecosystem overall. So over to you, Charles.
Thank you, Nazri. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you can see my screen. Okay, fantastic. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. We are talking about the future of finance today. And let me see if I can move the cursor. Okay. As of today, the IDC forecast that the growth for the global AI market is incredible growth by the numbers. In the next 3 years, by the end of 2024, we are expecting that there's a double-digit growth of 500 billion in the market. That is a very huge number that we are looking at. And if you look at the trend now, it's always an upward trend, especially when you look at the software platform. This is the highest number from the software trend. And in terms of technology, can you see my screen? I think I have some, the screen stops. Let me start again. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
You can see the screen, huh?
Yep.
Okay. So there are certain industries which are heavily impacted by AI, and audit is one of them. The audit practice, we talk about the past, the presence. You know, in the past we talk about historical numbers. Today we talk about data analytics. We talk about assurance of services to mitigate risks instead of providing past historical opinions. And we talk about the audit process from control monitoring to continuous transaction monitoring. And we talk about substantive testing. When I was an auditor as a young guy who just finished school, I have done a lot of substantive sample testing, which is very tedious and manual. And today, automation is, all these are done automatically. And one of the most frequently used technique is the robotic process automation, where a lot of our documentation is being done by the robots. So we used to charge the clients for the time that we spend to do the audit. Today, the new way of doing it is the connectivity fees that the client use in the platform of an auditor. So we don't bill by the hours anymore. We manage the services billing for the use of the digital assets and the utilization. So, and that gives us a more all-rounder
Mr. Charles,
yes.
Can you maximize your slide?
Oh, I can't make.
Yes, display settings.
Okay, see all slides. Screen.
Hide presenter view.
Presenter mode. Let me see.
Just now you.
This one.
The right one.
Right one. Shot.
Yes. Hide presenters. Yeah.
Hide presenter view. Okay. Can you see that?
Can you just maximize? Yes, maximize it.
Is it maximized now?
Not yet.
Maximize?
No, it's not yet. Maximize. Okay.
Okay, somebody control the slides. Means how do I maximize this?
Yeah. Is it maximized?
No, I can't do the maximization now. Let me see. Slide from the background.
I think it's okay. We can just carry on with the flow. It's more readable now. It's just that
okay, it's readable.
Yep. Go ahead, please.
Okay. So today we are talking about the full testing, real-time testing in this using AI environment, and we're talking the future of accountancy. We talk about what AI technology can do. So we talk about machine learning, we talk about what can be transformed by AI from finance transaction processing to the a lot of virtual agent is being used today that you no longer use a human being to do the job. So I mean, I'm sure you have experienced talking to a bot instead. And for auditors, I think these are the things that you probably have gone through. Some of you may not have gone through, or many of you have gone through. AI will help auditors to become more efficient, and that makes you increase the productivity by helping organization to meet the goals. So which this dispel the fears of many auditors that AI will take over the job, will take over the business. Because when you can use AI to do a faster job, you can get more business, and a client will like it because your work will be more accurate, and so it gives you the ability to do a real-time fraud detection and monitoring. And the impact for the impact of technology in the audit and finance. So basically, data analytics is increasing the accessibility of data. However, human intervention is still required to filter the data and to communicate and advise the clients effectively. And this is a statement that we always make all the time. Whenever we introduce AI to anybody and people says, is AI going to take away my job? Is AI going to compete with me? But the good news is AI, regardless of what we do in AI, we still need a human being to provide a personal touch, to provide a personal session, to interpret the data for the clients effectively. And this is where we have a new value that we can provide to the client. And in accountancy, we talk about computer vision, we talk about speech, we talk about text. Now, AI can help you to convert a lot of your documentation into text and speech into text, where, or you can, there's a lot of help desk facilities which use AI as a tool. And one of the case study by the Chartered Professionals Accountants of Canada, where you use big data and AI, and we use a RPA, a robotic process automation, where you process, instead of processing invoices manually, you can scan the invoice, you can validate the invoice by using artificial intelligence, and because of this, you are able to do the work faster. And as a result, the cost savings is tremendous. You achieve a 70% cost savings, and the accuracy of the data validation is 95%, which means that you can process more. And as you see here, the cycle will be so much faster than getting a human being to do it. So you can do it like 3 to 4 times faster. And I have some other samples that you can see. And apart from this, AI impacts the CFO. The CFO, where you get a lot of automations, a lot of data, and the financial controller, the service leader, and for people who's in the investor relation, you can use AI to predict what's going to happen, and you are going to identify what is the fundamental ratios of the company using AI, and you'll see some samples later, and that also impacts the people like the equity analyst. And the technology trends in accounting and finance shows that there is intelligent finance, there's a touchless memory processing, accelerated and continuous accounting, smart financial reporting, which we have been using for the longest time. And we perform planning and predictive forecasting, which is very important. Predictive analysis means that we are no longer using a dashboard. And one of the very big research firm called Morningstar just recently, March 27, published this article that they have more than 3,000 mutual funds and 520 ETF, and by that is done manually. But if they use a computer, use an AI to do it, they can do 10 times more funds analysis. They can do almost 8 times more ETF. using AI. And this is a setup where they have 130 human analysts. So can you imagine, if you use an AI, you can do 10 times more business, you can do 10 times more revenue coming to you, and without replacing your existing team, but your team that you have now become more productive, and you can perform more job in the shortest time. And this is one of the examples that we use for our clients, and this is under asset management. This is a live example, but we changed the name. This is for an insurance company that we evaluated. This is for my personal client. So the report highlighted the top ways, and they give you a big yes, no, yes, no. Was the company able to generate higher sales? No. Did the sales move faster than sales growth? And this kind of analytics give you a very good indication without you spending too much time reading the financial analytics report. So I just flashed this to show you a flavor of how is it like to use AI report in risk assessment analytics using a holistic approach. And the important part of the report is that it gives you recommendation, and all these are written using a computer, using a machine. And we have a report that shows you the financial profile, again using a very easy to read analysis, yes and no, yes and no. And in the words of the former chief scientist of Baidu from China, I always like this statement that he made. AI is the new electricity. It's just like the electricity transformed us more than 100 years ago. So AI is in the mainstream of our life, whether you like it or not, it comes to you. And the big boys like the Google, the Microsoft, the Facebook, all use AI as a service. And today you notice that, whenever you click on something on Facebook, and the next thing is you see a lot of advertisement on related to the subject. And Pricewaterhouse estimate that 45 of our work activities can be automated, and potentially that will save us 2 trillion in the global workforce cost. So you talk about optimization, this is one area. And you see that other accounting firms like KPMG is doing a lot of initiative. I just want to show you that they are doing something. They do machine learning, deep learning, voice recognitions with structured data, with NLG and LP. And Ernst & Young has been doing this for the longest time. They use AI to analyze their leasing contracts, the process automation, digital auditing, and they even use drones to monitor the inventory. And same goes to Deloitte. They have been using AI to review the legal contracts internally. So my key takeaway message today for you is that professional services providers need to upgrade themselves with AI to be relevant, to stay competitive in the business. And as a result, using AI, it will increase your productivity that will easily yield 5 times the return. So you just need to embrace it. And AI for accounting professionals are getting hyphenated. And without AI, machine learning, big data analytics, professionals today will find it very difficult to keep up with time. So the best way is to embrace it. And with that, I finish my presentation and sharing, and I'd like to pass back the time to Nazri.
Thank you so much, Charles, for bringing us through the types of technology and how these are being applied in the context of audit practice, fund managers, financial advisors, and so on. And I like your parting remark talking about how financial professionals will need to embrace technologies to survive in their next lap of their profession. So in the name of diversity, why not we have an alternate presentation, one by Charles, a male, and one by Busi, a lady, followed by Andrew, a male, and then Farah to end the session. After that, I'll take over to round up some of our little presentation. So Busi, over to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Charles. And I guess I'm going to start with where Charles ended. AI is all around us. I mean, Charles mentioned that, you go onto Facebook, you go Google something, and immediately you're going to get lots of feeds into your Instagram or into any of your social media. I mean, AI is on our mobile phones. We have AI in our homes. We have AI in our cars. I have a watch that's connected to so many other things. And I think this is testament to what Charles has said. AI is here to stay, and we definitely have to embrace it. And I think what's important is that it's really shifting how we do business. It's shifting how we interact with our employees, our customers, shareholders, communities we live, and communities we operate in. And this is community not just from a corporate perspective, but wider communities that we live in. So maybe just adding on to that, recently PwC published an interesting study in December 2020 that was entitled Artificial Intelligence, an Opportunity Amidst a Crisis, where over 850 global leaders, including chief experience officers, which is something fairly new that we're seeing lots of global companies appointing. I think we had an era where we had chief data officers being appointed because we realized data is important, but we're seeing a move now to most corporates, especially global one, appointing chief experience officers that really help them analyze data to make sure that they speak directly to customer experience. So those were also interviewed between August in 2020. And really what they were trying to get to was to understand how AI has been adopted in these different sectors and industry across these plus minus 850 global leaders that were interviewed. And the survey really revealed an interesting study. The people were interviewed between August and October 2020, and the survey was published in December 2020. And in this, there's been an increase from 62% to 70% since the start of the COVID pandemic, with India having greater adoption of artificial intelligence in the last year or so. And I think what's also interesting, what the survey has revealed, was that there's a renewed focus of AI to firstly enable front office transformation. So as I speak about better customer experience, with all the data that companies are having, how do you actually start ensuring that you speak to your customers and only share what you need to share with them? Secondly, accurate segmentation of customers, of stakeholders, to ensure that relevant information goes to the relevant stakeholders. And thirdly, empowerment of sales representative. But I think with the backdrop of this, as organizations are repairing, rethinking, and reconfiguring their businesses post the pandemic, there's an increased expectation that AI will help them achieve greater value. I think it's important that every organization I speak to as a consultant, they talk about the value that they bring to the customers, the value that they bring to their employees, and thirdly, the value that they bring to the shareholders, including stakeholders that are outside their business, so countries and people that operate within their space. AI will also help them achieve and create competitive advantage. And I think Charles spoke about, if you're not on the bandwagon of AI, if you do not transform your organization and make sure that you actually embrace technology, you're actually going to struggle with competitive advantage. And importantly, Charles also mentioned that augmenting decision-making capabilities. So AI is really helping organizations differentiate themselves and make sure that the capabilities of decision-making is becoming more important. And I just want to touch a little bit about the accounting fraternity, because that's where I operated in, and then I'll move into the cybersecurity, given what I currently do now. And I guess with what I've just shared around the study that PwC did, there's been an increase in adoption of AI, and I believe the finance teams are actually well positioned to lead broader organization shifts into digitization. And I say this because if you think of a role of finance in most organizations, they literally have insights into all the business units. So they will deal with your marketing, they will deal with your the rest of finance, they will deal with HR. So they will deal with the rest of the organization's business units, and they interact with them almost on a monthly basis because there's certain certain projects or certain monthly reconciliations or admin stuff that needs to happen on a monthly basis. So the finance teams are really well positioned to help leaders from all areas of organizations understand the why of financial data. And the why is important because historically, as we've seen, finance has been doing the what, which is looking at the historic, saying, you know, in the last 6 months, in the last 12 months, this is how you have performed. But I think finance is now really geared to move into the why, and AI can be a great tool and asset for the finance teams, the accountants, not a displacement, because I think, Charles, you mentioned that human intervention is still required. And I believe that finance jobs will become more effective when we allow machines to execute repetitive, mundane, manual accounting tasks. And I mean, those tasks that, you know, reconciliations, I think we've seen, gone are the days where finance teams really need to sit down and do bank reconciliations, payroll reconciliations, and all those type of reconciliations. Gone are the days where finance teams need to look at journals and process over a number of journals. I mean, I have clients in the banking industry and clients in the telco industries, and they have plus minus 1,000 to 2,000 journals that they have to process on a monthly basis just to make sure that they balance their books. So those tasks that are mundane, like journals, month-end reconciliation, budgeting, planning, forecasting, and financial reporting, can literally be done by AI. So technology can really empower accountants or finance people to ensure that those mundane jobs that can be done by technology will take place and happen. And what this will do will actually free up the people to actually do high-level activities that create overall productivity and improve partnerships with the rest of the business based on strategic insights that they can bring. So the finance teams can really start moving from what I call descriptive and diagnostic analytics, where they just describe what has happened and diagnose what has happened and show what has happened, looking into the past, into what I call predictive and prescriptive analytics. This is more being a business partner, having real-time interactive analytics and focus. And I think we're all aware, as we joined the webinar, the boards can now have access to real-time information by a press of a button, and can look at where we are as an organization, as shareholders, where are we going, what are the predictions, and accountants and finance teams can really empower those activities and ensure that all stakeholders stay up to date. I mean, coming from cybersecurity, we often used to say the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO, or the CIO, Chief Information Officer, didn't have a space at the table. And now we're saying it's actually time for finance people, the CFOs, the CEOs, to start showing more value by moving upfront and doing prescriptive analytics and doing what-if analysis, what-if scenarios that will help the business in starting to plan and understand and segment the customers, understand what the board's requirement is, and quickly, without waiting for 3 months, to share the board packs that shows history information, but look at continuous updating of the board. So when a question is asked, they're easily empowered to make those decisions and show those what-if scenarios, therefore adding more value to the business and to the rest of the stakeholders. And I honestly believe that they can become finance people, especially CFOs, accountants, can become strategic business partners by moving into intelligent dashboarding. And I often go back to being a CA. I mean, there's an accounting professional purpose of adhering to codes of conduct, ethics, and moral obligations. And I believe by doing this, we'll be able to apply professional skepticism, because I think there is so much data that's sitting out there. And if we're just churning and making sure, we're doing invoices, we're doing reconciliations, we don't take a step back and stop and apply professional skepticism that we can bring and that can help organizations or the companies we work for actually move forward and start thinking about the future. Because I think the past is the past. There isn't that much we can do about it. But what's important is, how do you take the past and start doing predictive analytics to make sure that you actually become more of a business partner, of a strategic business partner to the board, to the rest of the organizations. And I mean, after I said this, when I was busy preparing for this, I just started thinking about there's great opportunities. And I think there's based on what I've shared with the studies that we've done, based on the studies that Charles has shared, the concern around whether there'll be jobs or not. I honestly believe if you look at the studies and the work that's been done, there'll definitely be jobs. But what would that require? What sort of jobs would you need to have, and whose role would it be to ensure that the up and coming finance people really understand what they need to do? I think it's something that we need to work closely together, being government, being education sector, and both lower and higher education and corporates to say that this is what we're seeing happening. How do we start getting the education system to get involved and create students that are active learners that learn for life? Because the only way to really get to this is ensuring that the roles of finance are going to change from what they have. We're going to need data scientists, people that understand data. We're going to need scenario planners, people that are able to stop and do what if scenarios. What if this changes? If we lose this customer, what does this mean? If we do go through a digital transformation and we bring in this tool and we remove a legacy system that has been there, that has so much data of our customers. Think of a telecommunication that has over 100 billion data or trillion data sets. What's going to happen to that? We need somebody who's going to do that. We need people that are going to understand new market business makers, people that are going to understand with this data that we have, how do we start thinking about what sort of customers are we going to be bringing? What sort of customers, if I'm in a telco and I start understanding more about banking, and we want to start offering some services outside of the traditional telco, what sort of customers am I going to be bringing? And we need people that are going to do this. We actually need people that are going to understand social behavior scientists. So people that are going to go onto all the social behavior, social media, and start building models that talk to that social behavior and start implementing them into organizations. So the role of finance has really shifting from just being somebody who understands accounting, who understand, normally called number crunching, but it's moving from people that just crunch numbers into that higher, I call it a linear curve, and moving into those spaces where you start bringing insights from all these different data sets. And then maybe just going lastly, it's important, and I think if you looked at the invite, it talks about, some of the trends the financial community should take note. And in order for us to get to use AI responsibly, and I often talk about responsible AI, especially coming from an African continent, because there's still a little bit of that gray area where most organizations, and I could even say some governments, are still a bit reluctant from an AI perspective because of perception of job losses, perception of data, access to data over and beyond what people have agreed to. So if we look at that, we need to understand that in order for us to get there, we need to be responsible from an AI perspective. It makes me reflect on exponential growth in data. So now we have tools that are able to get data both structured and unstructured. But what's important to note with that is, given the rise in data privacy legislation across the globe, I mean, we're all aware of GDPR, if you're in the UK and the EU and the US with the different legislations around privacy, and you think about Africa, where we're still very young from a data privacy perspective, what does that mean? I mean, do we have one source of data? And is that data that we have actually the correct data that we can utilize? And what I'm seeing around the continent, which is really encouraging, we're seeing a number of data centers being built. I've helped one data center in South Africa, where they were looking at how to build a data center, what sort of information they need to do. So we're seeing a rise in data center, which really says there is an opportunity, but equally so, we need to look at the risk that the data privacy legislation might have on companies wanting to collect data in order to make sure that from an AI perspective, they're able to use algorithms and machine learning to get the best outcome. Because if you have incorrect data that's not cleansed, that comes from multiple systems, I often say garbage in, garbage out. So I think that's important. And maybe lastly, just around lower computing costs. I agree there is a huge rise in clients or organizations moving into cloud. We've seen a rise in cloud adoption in the continent since we were hit by COVID. And with this, I think it's important to really note that as there's a rise in cloud adoption, I think of some of the telcos I work with. I think some of the financial services I work with, they really have legacy systems that have so much information. How do you start moving that legacy system into the cloud? What security controls do you have in place to ensure that once your information is on the cloud, it is secure and it can actually be secured from a cybersecurity attacks, and what sort of controls as an organization should you be thinking about? And as I say this, I said I will talk about, Nazri knows, I'll talk about opportunities and risks. But with the cybersecurity risk, I think it shouldn't stop organizations from really ensuring that the migration to cloud is happening, because this will help them actually get better information, single source of truth. And what's also encouraging from an Africa continent, we have big players like a Microsoft building cloud data centers in the country. So as maybe in closing, I think what I'd like to say that is, going back to what Charles said, AI is really here to stay. But I think what's important is, from a finance perspective, the finance community to really start setting themselves up and understanding what their role is going to be in embracing their technology and actually sitting in the table when these technology discussions are being made, not just adopting them. So when the CIO, the CTOs, the CXOs are sitting and having conversations around the technology, I believe it's time that the finance community sit in those conversations, because at the end, they are the consumers of those technologies, and they need to make sure that what they want to get now and become the strategic partners to the business, what they want to get at that space, is actually built into all these technologies. Thank you, Nazri.
Thank you so much, Busi, for the excellent explanation of how you explain the dynamics between human and data, and within the human realm, the roles, the evolving roles and the transformational roles that humans need to play. And within the data realm, you talk about the complexity, the volume of it, and how the role of a human needs to have a more forward-looking approach to how they manage data. And scaffolding the human and data dynamics, I like the fact that you put a sense of responsibility and the kind of security and the kind of risks associated with it, which happened to be posted by one of the members in the panel, the audience, who asked about the risk, the price of having AI into the whole equation. But let's put that during the Q&A questions session. So now I would like to welcome Andrew to come forward and share with us his experience bringing digital transformation into PKF. Over to you, Andrew. Thank you, Busi.
Thanks, Nazri. Thanks, Busi. I think both speakers have highlighted some of the discussions that I'm going to be talking about today. Perhaps I'm one level down in terms of the level of presentation, where both Busi and Charles have given a helicopter view of what these four forces that we're looking at will be driving it. Charles spoke about the promise of AI and the opportunities that brings to us as an accounting profession. And Busi spoke to the concept around how do you realize the value that comes from AI. And I think that those two are very clear drivers of what I was planning to speak around today, is that we recognize that AI is bringing opportunities, and we need to understand how we as an accounting profession start to realize these opportunities going forward. I think that the first thing for me is recognizing that this is a great time to be working with your accounting profession, with your accounting colleagues, with the profession, to start to understand what our role is. Busi spoke about the new roles that are being generated, the data scientists. And I think that as a rule, we're expecting a significant amount of change. If we think in the last year, the amount of change we've seen, not because of the pandemic, but because of technology, it seems to be accelerating more quickly, and changing our lives in ways we would never have anticipated. So I think that the four key themes that come out of this panel are the growth in the data, the algorithms and how quickly they're being generated and used, the level of computing costs, and the migration to clouds and all of those opportunities that are presenting themselves. And then lastly, the speed. It used to take many hours to generate something. It'll take you half an hour to spin up something on Amazon or AWS or any of those platforms. But I think for me, one of the messages that came out of the 2020 AI World Summit is the actual extent of change that's being predicted. And they talk about 85 million jobs in the next 5 years being displaced. And I think that the word displaced is really important. It's not lost, it's displaced. So that's what that's telling you, is that the number of jobs that AI is going to be impacting are significant. And to an extent that I don't think, in terms of the history of man, things that you used to do, if you were a farmer, you were a farmer. Or if you're an accountant, you're an accountant. I think that in today's world, that is changing really, really, really quickly. So if we look forward in terms of how we start to realize change and how we start to look for opportunities for change, there are two key questions that we've been asking ourselves. And the first is, where do we focus? Because AI really does bring in, and data really does bring in, so many different opportunities for us, and so many areas that we can say, let's explore these opportunities. The question is, which ones do we tackle first? And if we can prioritize the ones that we tackle first to build on into the future, that will then put us in good stead to slowly progress from a immature to a mature organization that is leveraging AI. And the second thing is, if we know what we need to do, what do we do first? Because there's always going to be a limited set of resource available to us. And I think that if you look at that limited set of resource, I think that there was a question from one of our participants asking, how does a small firm take advantage of this with a limited budget? And I think that really starts to give some kind of sense about how do we prioritize. So I've put some questions down on some of the indicators that will drive, one, where to focus, and two, how to prioritize. Of course, competitors being the most important one. But two, I think that there's a recognition that there are so many activities out there and so many companies offering amazing services that were never believed to be possible are now coming to market. So, I think that it's a combination of trying to understand what it is that you as an organization need to focus on, and how do you partner to go forward. There's a whole bunch of questions that drive out of that, none of which I think I'd like to talk about today, because we can spend a whole session just talking about what are the areas of innovation that you would need to focus on to drive this. So if I move to the next question, the next focus, I'm just highlighting some of our internal priorities, and I've just made a note. I think these are generic priorities across the industry, so they're not specific to us, but they are areas that all advisory firms will be looking at in order to expand. I've just focused on two, or I have highlighted some more, of areas that we started to work on and exploring, mostly through partnerships with companies that are specialists in these areas. So the first in advisory, we're looking at exploring data discovery tools. And that really is a part of our data strategy and risk advisory practice. And it's really the beginning or the starting point of any process when you start looking at AI, is starting to understand the data that sits within an organization. And there are two components of that. The first is your structured, and the second is your unstructured data. So between your unstructured and your structured data, understanding where your critical data is, what it's being used for, how important is it, how critical is it, how sensitive is it, and understanding that. So we've been spending quite a lot of time in understanding that, and my next slide will talk to that. And the second is around assurance and looking at how to leverage AI to support some of our practice initiatives. And one of the areas we've been sharing with Nasri, and I'll talk to that similar now, is around our onboarding and how do we get information quicker, richer, and smarter that used to take several days to do, we now do at the push of a button. So that's really two examples of some of our priorities. There are many others, and all really focused around those four driving forces: the smart algorithms, the growth in data, the speed and the cost of producing these things. So in the past, it used to be a huge effort to build AI. Now, if you find your partners, you'll find that your costs are reducing quite significantly, and the speed at which you're being able to produce things is so much lower. So just as two examples, this is a snapshot from one of our service offerings that talks about data discovery. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but really to talk around the concept of what we call accelerator services. So what we're trying to do is to find how do we take something and then deliver it really quickly without a significant amount of investment. So really it's about identifying where your data is, doing a catalog of your assets, and then building a report to say this is where the risk sits. And as an example of that, we're working with a partner who are plugged into understanding what your data risk is and how you as an organization can start to reduce that. And it's a very clever way of using machine intelligence to start to understand where your risk lies. So this is looking at the cost of loss or cost of exposure of all of your data. It's attaching it depending on the type of data that it is. It's looking for personal data, it's looking for card data, it's looking for financial data. And out of that will come a view. But the clever thing about this kind of process is that this isn't a once-off exercise. It does it as often as you want. So it gives you the opportunity to understand where your data is, where your risk is, and you'll see at the bottom of the screen there are those blocks that give you the level of exposure. And then it starts to measure over time how you are starting to manage your data risk. And so this is a really cool way as an organization to start to focus on the things that matter. Busi spoke earlier to data quality. And if your data quality isn't good, then nothing is good. So this is a way of starting to focus your energy and attention on the things that matter. So that's in terms of the data risk. In terms of our client acceptance process, we've been working with Nasri around how do we accelerate our process. And we spent a lot of time talking about using one of the tools that are provided by MyFinB to say, how do we get to a process where we can do our onboarding in an hour or less, and at a cost that is far more palatable for us as an organization. So we spent a lot of time thinking about what it was we needed, what the problem was, and how we would go about doing it. And we're now in the process of launching the service across our onboarding process. And what that produces, and you'll see on the right of the screen, there is an example of the kind of report that's coming out of what is a very simple and straightforward process. And I won't go into any more detail around that, but it's a way of taking our onboarding time and reducing it quite significantly. So in conclusion, I think for me, there are a couple of areas that I'd like to spend a bit of time talking about. And the first is a recognition that everything that we've seen to date and all of the discussions around AI represent what I see as just the very first step. And the speed that we are progressing around transforming our systems and processes is the beginning of what is going to be a very rapid and a very disruptive journey in changing our lives forever in the accounting profession. And everything that you look at and everything that you touch and see as we see it today is going to be significantly different. You talk about terabytes of data that are being accumulated by these large companies. And it's about how to understand as an organization how to leverage that. So I think, so the first point is the recognition that we're just beginning. The second for us is that we're starting to understand that our relevance as an accounting profession is changing very, very quickly. It's changing the expectations of our customers and our clients. It's changing on the kind of roles and expectations that our clients are expecting us to be involved in. It's changing how we go about processing data to present a more holistic view. So it's no longer a chart of accounts. It's now a view that shows you everything associated with the organization. So I think that what we're doing as a profession is going to change very, very rapidly, whether we want to do it or not. I think also that in terms of who we are, so if you look at any financial organizational structure, you will see that the roles that are there are pretty much on their way out. And looking at as the workplace is digitizing, and Busi spoke to this earlier, the roles are going to be changing quite significantly. And then lastly, what I just to talk around is that there are two drivers. One is we want more, and we want it for much less. And in order for us to do that, we're going to be looking at giving something to many people to allow them to do a lot more, much more quickly, without too much training, and yet in a far more complex and challenging environment. I'm going to finish up there, Nazri. I think if there's any other questions, happy to take them.
Yes, thank you, Andrew, for the once again excellent presentation. I like the way you aptly end your presentation with more for less. And as I introduced you earlier, you are a very visionary guy, at the same time very pragmatic. Without looking even at your slides, I can imagine you adopting a certain level of pragmatism when you talk about priorities, when you talk about the 8 parameters or considerations when it comes to prioritizing how and when and how fast, how deep you want to go into digital roadmap, digital implementation. So in the context of assurance and advisory, I like the way you wrap it around the process side of things that address the strategic needs of the organization. So thank you so much for that. We will leave some of the tough questions to you and Busi and Charles, but not forgetting what do you call that? Our lady from Kanzun, Farah, who will speak from the perspective of fund managers or venture capitalists, as well as a venture builder perspective. So over to you, Farah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nazri. Yes, finally, I get to present this. Thank you so much again, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are from. I'll just share my slide for a bit. Okay. Right. I'm from Kanzun Ventures, and Kanzun, the meaning of it is actually treasure, perfect treasure. The meaning is in Arabic and Japanese. So today I will be touching on the future of finance with AI, having a venture capitalist perspective. So for those uninitiated and not familiar with venture capital, what we do is that we are an alternative investment asset class that dwells in investment in equity. We take direct investments, stakes in company for a consideration, and then we actually hold a position in that company after a certain period of time, and then we will exit the company for profits. So what we do is that we source for deals that have potential to multiply our investment returns, invest and optimize shareholders' wealth. We also help the company to build itself from the ground up, venture building activities, advising and helping SMEs and the startups to establish and improve their go-to-market approaches, as well as try to help them achieve their commercialization strategies, as well as their sales target. Oh, sorry, I just actually went, how do I go actually? All right. So in actually coming up with the proposal to secure our bigger investors, LPs to the fund, we actually have to say target and deliver to them a higher amount of returns. And in doing so, we actually have to look for a select few of investments that actually can make a viable return. Therefore, we actually have to process a lot of information coming from these startups and SMEs, you know, in terms of their pitch decks, in terms of their financials that they present to us. These are vast amount of unstructured and structured data altogether. So we will have to use the AI to make sense of all this data coming to us. That is where the smarter algorithm kicks in, and the reports that's made available by some of the AI technology service provider is at a much lower cost, and it actually helps us in terms of our processing speed. So what we've done here is that the AI turns the financial data. On the left side, you can see this is like what I do, like a cash flow to present to my LPs. And also, I will receive this kind of information from my potential investees also. So what AI does is that they turn the AI financial data into actionable insights, a more how do you say easier to understand reports, you see, and it actually makes sense when it is actually structured in a certain way, uh, easily to digest, easier to digest. Okay, so AI in VC, AI have long back the VC firms have long back AI, and now we are already using it, and there's also the usage of the algorithms, AI algorithms. And we as Kanzun, we always have supported and bring the AI, the potential AI companies to build AI together with MyFinB. And we're also planning to build X Factor, incorporating AI into our VC investments and fund management processes. In certain sense, some people, they are like more like venture hunters, like the deal hunters. So the unicorn hunters, we would like to also think ourselves as we are building unicorns. We are breeding and growing the unicorns instead of also hunting the unicorns. Yeah. So we are planning to build X Factor for Kanzun, and then for EQT Ventures, they are using this AI platform called Mother Brain to rank potential investments. And then there's also Correlation Ventures. They're already using their own built system to analyze troves of startup data, including pitch decks supplied by founders seeking funding. So AI's ability to turn massive amount of raw data into meaningful information and insight for investment decision is very imperative for now. So let me just carry you through the end-to-end venture capital process. This is just according to my very short interpretation. At the first, we will have the deals origination, and we will screen and filter through the information that we receive from the startups and the SMEs. And this is where we can also apply AI. And then there will be next the evaluation and due diligence stage. There's several stages to this. And then if they pass through this particular process, where we actually vet for the risk, and we'll see through the profile of the promoters, and we'll see through the viability of investing into that project, whether it's sustainable in terms of profits, and whether there's demand in the market for the particular product. And then we'll go to the investment decision making, where the investment committee sits. After that, the additions will be made, whether it will be through ratings, you know, it can be through the polling of the marks given by the judges, or sorry, the investment committee members. And then we'll move to the legal documentations, which includes the term sheet, the shareholders agreement, subscription agreement, and all that. And then we go to onboarding. We bring the company onto our portfolio. After that, we will have the portfolio management. It can be in various industries because it depends on the mandate of the venture capital firm, whether they are, you know, focused on deep tech or renewables or energy sector or social impact. There's so many sectors and verticals that we have to look at, and that this is where we actually can use AI to help us to process the information. And then during all this time, we will always have to engage our stakeholders, you know. And this, I think, Affinity has come up with a CRM for VC to actually also engage our stakeholders for the further reporting. And how and where AI can be implemented in a VC. I know I might have mentioned it previously, but these are some of the levels where we can actually implement AI in the VC. Deals origination to check on the promoters. It is so imperative that we check the background of the promoters to see whether they're trustworthy to carry on the business to be invested into, and to filter and screen the deals. And we also have to prepare, the AI can help us to prepare our financials in terms of ROI, RR, valuation, pre-money and post-money valuation, and to determine the valuation of a potential investments. On the other hand, we also have the fund level reporting, which can also be helped by the AI, and also investee level reporting. There's the portfolio management and monitoring. It also helps to use AI in our sectoral exposure, asset allocation, screening, due diligence. And for one special thing, the turnaround plan for underperforming companies or companies facing financial distress, or having some bad times. I think MyFinB have this product called Restore and Rebuild, to help the company to turn around. This is a very good solution to have for SMEs and startups. So we see the use cases of data-driven VCs. There's Signalfire. Signalfire, they use this data platform called Beacon, and they use Beacon to actually for deal origination through picking the right investments, deal syndication, and portfolio support. And then they have a 645 Venture. 645 Venture, they have the 645 Voyager. That's actually, they use it for automated deal sourcing through deal evaluation, due diligence, and syndication and portfolio support. And there's also the Back VC, which is a USD 30 million pan-European seed fund that's trying to bring community-driven ethos to European venture world. Okay, so many VCs now using AI solution, and this is actually sourced by the hackernoon.com through medium.com. So this is actually the list gathered by hackernoon.com as at the end of 2019, and there's 83 there, and I just added the Kanzun there because we've also quite pro in AI. Just to share with you the types of deals that we have to process. As at the middle end of February, we already have in our pipeline around 100 deals. And this is actually narrowing through some of the 5 favorite deals. And we look at the funding requirement that each deal wants to raise. And we look at the percentage offer of shares that you want to give to the investors, the potential returns, and how they arrive to that, and how they justify that, and their valuation, and then also their positioning of that particular company, how they actually want to support in terms of the SDGs. Yeah. So this we have the artificial intelligence in education that's raising 200,000 minimum to 2 million minimum the ticket. And then it is able to achieve 3x to 5x in 3 years, and is in support of SDG 4. And then we have the Polonia deal that can give investors 9% per annum. And then the AI in dialysis treatment, this is also another effort together with MyFinB. This is a really good investment to make. And another one is in pharmaceutical, and another one is in marketing and branding. So there's various types of industries that we go into, and then the data that we have to process as well. So it will be very good to actually have AI solution to help us back our decision makings, and also making sense of all the data that we receive. Conclusion, the way forward that VCs are adopting AI in our fund management and investment processes. There's the digitization of fund and processes. As at the end of 2019, there's 84 VCs. I think there's more, definitely, implementing AI in our fund management. And AI can help VCs to address our fund management needs, especially in the screening and due diligence. Implementing AI in decisioning helps the IC in arriving to a more objective decision making. Implementing AI helps to increase effectiveness and efficiency in investment making and investment decision making and fund management. So our unique value proposition is that we are pro AI in building our ventures and our fund management approaches, from sourcing, screening, to making investment decisions, to portfolio management. We are moving towards the digitization and automation of processes for the fund expected. That means we want to also perhaps include all the investment agreements for the potential investors on the blockchain, and then automate all the processes. So our strategic partnerships globally approaches our approaches helps us to scale and have presence beyond Malaysia. And some of our offerings consist of AI deals that yield 3x to 5x in 3 years. So I thank you for listening to me and hope to connect with all of you. Our fund is also still open for LPs to invest together with us. I'm reachable at my LinkedIn as for what is on the screen. And thank you for listening again. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Farah. Excellent stuff that you shared with us. What I like about your presentation is the fact that you put forward what you call the concept of AI-ready VCs. And the theme of AI-ready venture capitalists are substantiated with your own moves by not only adopting AI within your firm, but also pushing AI ventures that basically form the basis of your portfolio. And most importantly, I'm impressed with the fact that you align it with the SDG 17. So that puts you in a different category of impact investing. So very, very impressive, I must say, the kind of major leaps and bounds that you made since the last time we signed an MOU about 1.5 to 2 years ago. Yeah. So thank you so much. What I like about this panel is that number one, despite being informed at short notice, right, they piece up together practical as well as, very, very a non-theoretical approach to adopting AI. So it's a very practitioner-centric kind of theme. And the fact that it was done in a short period of time and they put their efforts to share with us all this knowledge and wisdom tells a lot about their commitment towards the AI transformation. So there are a couple of questions that are put up to all the panelists. I hope my FIMI team has given them those list of questions. So even though I have my own presentation deck, which is a couple of slides, but I prefer the floor to ask the panelists whatever they want to ask in relation to number one is security or the cost or the risks of adopting AI. The second one would be about whether small firms can adopt AI. Is it just restricted to the big 4, the big 15, can the small fellas basically adopt AI? And if so, how do they do that? Yeah, and there are other questions about, let me see, barriers, no, not barriers. Any others, Miza, can you share the questions? So meanwhile, maybe the first two questions can be put forth. Who would like to take the answer first, the question first? About the risk and the cost of AI. Okay, go ahead, Busi.
So maybe just from a risk perspective, I mean, there are a number of risks that have been documented. Every thought leadership, or if you go and Google the risks associated with AI, there's a number of them. But I think what's also quite interesting, these risks haven't really changed much. So if you go look at a publication that we did in 2017 or anybody else did in 2017, and the one that I recently just spoke about that we did in December, there's 5 distinct risks that are still there, and they're not in any order. And I think maybe just talking through those risks, I don't know if we have time to talk about the opportunities, because I say with every risk, we need to find an opportunity to actually make sure that that risk converts into value. But maybe that's a topic for another day. So the perceived risk from an AI perspective, compliance risks, and I think non-compliance with industry laws and regulations, because you can imagine the number of industries that have industry-specific legislations that they need to comply with. And when you add that layer of AI, machine learning, how do you ensure that you're still complying with the simple example, how do you ensure that you're still complying with the data privacy legislation in your country? The second risk, and I think I kind of alluded to earlier, is the cybersecurity risk. And I mean, with the amount of data that we have, we all say now data is the new oil, data is the new fuel. But with the amount of data that you have, how do you ensure that that data is still secure? How do you ensure that you don't have adversary attacks coming in and getting access to that data and actually putting it in the dark web, which is a trading platform for hackers? And now with AI, we're seeing lots of open source software being used. And we all know that there's a number of risks associated with using open source. So how do you ensure from a security perspective, you have the correct security? Thirdly, quickly, just the performance risks. And I think it goes to a question I saw earlier about ethics. there is a potential risk of errors, bias, and performance instability. How do you manage that risk as an organization? Fourthly, the ethical risk. And I think I've never been to a conversation where we talk about AI and there isn't a question around ethics. So it's, I mean, a machine doesn't have, or you could argue it does, or it doesn't come with a set of values or a set of ethics. So how do you build that? And how do you make sure that that's aligned to the values of your organization and the values of your stakeholders that you deal with? So I think that's very important. And lastly, just the control risk of lack of human agency in AI supported process, inability to control rogue AI. There is a potential that a hacker can introduce or inject something that will make your AI go rogue. So how do you control that? So I'll just stop there with those 5 risks.
Very good. And this can be linked to question 4 from Han Lau about how safe is cloud storage. This question goes out to the rest of the panelists, where there's a saga happening, right? 550 million Facebook data has been leaked out, and they themselves are an AI player. Facebook deploys a lot of AI, yet they've been infiltrated. They've been breached. Their security has been breached and leaked. 500 over million data, personal data about the Facebook user have been leaked. What do you guys think of this in the context of the first question and the 4th question? Like, despite them being a giant, despite them having all the security measures, they still got hacked, and all our personal data has been released out in dark web. Andrew, your views on this, and Charles, just a quick view on that.
Thanks, Nezri. I think for me, no matter how good your cyber security is, and Busi, you can probably agree with me, the level of sophistication of the criminals and syndicates that are looking for data is growing quicker than our ability to respond. The question is, how safe is cloud storage? The question is, well, in the dam, how many taps do you have open, and how do you manage it? I think that the current indicator is it takes 18 months for an organization to know that they've had a breach. So that gives an indication of how important it is to focus on getting the right level of expertise and support to help you manage your data. And even if you do that and you have the right partner, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you from having a breach. An organization like Facebook, who spend millions of dollars on cybersecurity, still get it wrong. So I think that it's one of these things you'll always chasing, will always be trying to fix and focus, but there's never a guarantee that you will not be impacted.
Charles, what do you think? Based on what Andrew has said, right, and what Busi has shared, so that means that we are never safe in this digital world.
Yes.
That's I were to imply from what both of them have said.
Yes, thank you, Nazri. I will share with you my personal experience as a banking operation and technology specialist, specialized in data center. All the data centers that we have today has the best security. Imagine 15 years ago when the market started to use a cloud storage, a cloud system, and all the banks will actually has a lot of restriction. They have a lot of objection, especially Citibank being one of the largest bank in America. But subsequently, we overcome this objection to make a cloud to be safe and good enough for the banks by having things like a security in place. You have a private cloud. And today, you can see the total change in perspective. Today, every bank will ask a software vendor, because I'm a software specialist, I know what they ask. They say, the bank will ask you, does your software run on cloud? If your software does not run on cloud, the bank will not use your software, because the bank will have to buy their own server, they have to install the system, and this is already a thing in the past. Today, nobody install any software, nobody buy any hardware at all. And what does it tell you? It tells you that every software that sits in the cloud has to meet certain security criteria, and that makes it safe. And how safe is safe? Why are there still people who have a breach of data? It's just like, you have a bank, you have a vault, and with a very big safe in the bank that nobody can get in. But if somebody wants to rob the bank, they will think of any single method to rob the bank. It's the same. In cloud, yes, you can have all the security you want in the world. But if somebody wants to rob you, somebody wants to steal your data, they can steal. I mean, I have personally experienced that no matter how careful you are, if somebody wants to do something bad to you, they will find ways, and they are smart. The thieves are smart. They know where to find your weakness and to attack you. So my conclusion, yes, cloud storage is safe. Otherwise, the whole world wouldn't be using cloud storage. So everything that you do today is on cloud storage. So you ask yourself whether cloud storage is safe or not. You answer it yourself because you are one of the users.
Busi, 1 minute answer. On a scale of 1 to 10, how vulnerable are clouds or our data that is sitting on cloud right now? 10 being most secured, 1 is the least secured. How would each of you rate the level of security and comfort between 1 to 10 as of today's technology and today's vulnerability?
So
10,
I'll
most secured, 1 is least secured.
So I'd say if you don't if you don't invite security as you're going onto cloud, you'd probably be on a 2. But if the security teams that are deploying the cloud are sitting with the cloud software vendors and making sure that the security is built in from the beginning, I'd move it to an 8.
Wow,
You are
very
never
polarized.
fully secured.
Excellent. Andrew, how about you? Scale of 1 to 10?
For me, it's a 1 and a 10. You need to have all of the tabs turned off, and then you can get to a 10. But then no one will be able to access it. Or it's a 1 because you haven't put all their requirements in. Even AWS, fantastic security, but someone needs to access it at some stage. So it's somewhere between there, depending on how well you've identified and turned your taps off.
A lot of uncertainty in there. Uncertainties. How about Charles? 1 to 10.
Yes, I would give a 9 to those big names, established names like
All right.
people like AWS or the Microsoft or the Facebook. Yes, even though there is a breach, but I generally think that most of the clouds for all the big names are
safe,
there.
yeah?
They are up to mark. Otherwise, they will not pass any compliance. They will not pass any government's usage. They would not be able to host any data for any banks. So for that matter, my benchmark will be, yes, they are safe when you see the big boys use them. So, but of course, if you see a small player that nobody knows, and this is a mom and pop shop, then it's questionable. Then you probably say, well, maybe I give them 2.
How about Farah? You?
I think
How
I'll
would you
give a
rate the level?
range of between 4 to 7, like a chess stance, right? Because the more accredited one might have around 7, and then the lesser ones, it will be around 4. Because right now the hackers are getting quite, good, better day by day. They can hack through any systems. So yeah, around 4 to 7.
Right. The idea is just to have a feel of your vulnerability or your confidence into the storage, on cloud. So that I hope will give some audience some perspective. I got a last question for Farah from someone who basically asked, there's a new question actually from Abdul Razak, and there's another question I want to direct to you. So you got 2 questions to answer under 2 minutes, hopefully. More questions can be follow up with them, right? How AI can help small companies with limited fund. Is AI just restricted to big boys, or can the companies that you are building from a venture builder perspective still use AI, even though they are small, they don't have the big budget and they don't have the funds? And then for you will be whether AI can detect any creative accounting when the investee company tries to get your attention with big numbers and fantastic numbers. I'm sure you deal with this pretty in and out. Anybody can just chip in and we can end off the session with everyone's inputs. But over to you first, Farah.
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. Usually the people in the venture capital area, we are well trained to read the financial statements. And usually AI, correct me if I'm wrong, Nazri, the AI actually processes the information, what we teach to them, right? We actually teach that like the machine learning, we teach them how to read, we teach them how to process, right? It augments our abilities to actually come up with the rationalization and whether to accept or to reject a certain proposal. So yes, in the past, we've went through a lot of financials, and we know when people are doing creative accounting. I for myself, actually, I have a question one CFO. I questioned him until he actually admits he actually got the numbers from the, not to the sky. He actually admitted, and it's actually quite disconcerting. So it happens, and then we can actually perhaps train this AI. I do not know like the level of AIs that actually can detect. There must be some advanced level of AI that can be used to, detect all this kind of creative accounting. But humans, otherwise, we actually there's also those who are well versed in actually ascertaining whether these financials are true and correct. And there's also various ways. That's why it's also very important when we want to invest into the company. We use the AI to check out the background of the promoters. I think Nazir also have this sunburst, where we see the personality to see whether this person is trustworthy or not. That is a more important thing because once we know that they're trustworthy and that they're competent in what they're doing, they can actually carry through what the business that they have to carry through. Then there's the question of trust does not arise. Also, we still also have to be very careful when we deal with all the promoters, but AI helps us to make a more accurate, a more objective decision in arriving to our decisions in investments.
So are you implying that AI needs to be trained to think like a crook, to identify a crook?
Yes, yes, because sorry to say, even when I started out as a like a junior analyst way back in 2002, that's how the chartered accountant actually trained me. They trained to read through all the lines, and this is how actually you can actually combine it, and then capitalize this, do this, move this here, move this there. So yes, you can teach the AI. I believe so. If you can teach the human, I think you can teach the AI as well. Yes.
Good answer. How about the question on how AI can help small companies before I extend the questions for the rest, and we can, go ahead.
So I think with my Hindi, the arrangement is fantastic because I believe you also have this arrangement where you can help the smaller companies to actually own AI assets, to build their own assets at an arrangement where they don't have to take up the full cost. So this enables a lot of technological solution to be forwarded in the innovation front. So I believe it is still possible to adopt AI, albeit at a lower cost. And you also make your reports at a very, competitive rates. So that is where some of the companies can also use the reports to actually, implement AI into their daily operations.
And thank you for the unscripted sharing
Yes.
on telling about our services.
Just a very sincere, honest take on my part.
Thank you so much. We don't expect that, but thank you so much.
Contribution by my Fimbi.
Thank you. Over to Busi, Charles, and Andrew. A short one to talk about the questions that was being posed about creative accounting and how you can use AI or human expertise for that matter to detect the over or understatement of what is being presented to the investors. How would you have done it differently? Who would like to take up first? Busi? I saw you unmuting your mic. Yeah.
Yes. I think I agree with everything Farah has just said. And I think you asked the question around, do we teach AI to think like fraudsters? My answer is no, we actually teach AI to have professional skepticism, because I think that's one thing that has kind of taken the back seat when people go through lots of transactions, when you go through the income statement, the balance sheet, the cash flow, and just making sure numbers balance, as opposed to taking a step back and finding the dots and seeing where they're actually connecting. So I think there's an opportunity to actually start getting finance people to start applying what Farah says she was taught years ago, which I was taught, and probably Andrew, you as a CA, you've been taught that professional skepticism is just going beyond the numbers and looking what's behind, or what could this potentially mean in the future. So I think there's an opportunity to do that, so that we move away from bias AI and we start talking about inclusiveness, which will also hopefully start talking to the ethics of AI.
Thank you, Busi. Let me challenge Andrew with this question. So do you think that professional skepticism is enough to outwit, outlast, and outthink even the darkest and the wittiest of crooks out there? Are accountants with all the professional skepticism are able to handle the level of sophistication and the level of, creativity that's out there? I mean, this should be posed to regulators, but I'm just curious how you feel about it, and Charles too.
I see two different components. The first, and what Busi is referring to, is the professional skepticism is understanding what the data says and being able to say whether you can or can't place reliance and make a judgment based on what the AI is telling you. I think that the question that you ask about the crooks out there and the people out there to either make a profit or to disrupt, I think that's a completely different question. So if you ask, can I place reliance on the AI? There are a number of questions, and one is, has this been manipulated by somebody for personal gain? So I think that is a completely different question to saying what, as a placing judgment and reliance on the data itself. So I think it's a bit of a challenge between the two requirements. Knowing your data is right and knowing it's correct and knowing it has been fiddled with, I think is the first question. And it's very hard to really put a number or a marker on that. So it's a difficult question. As you know, I'm not sure how one could tackle it without another half an hour time to delve down into some of the more detailed components of what it is to be a skeptic and apply professional judgment and the level and number of groups up to make gain or disrupt depending on the motivation. If you take the state sponsored activities and what's going on, let's go and influence the American voting. How can you predict what that is? AI is fundamental to so many things that they do there. Also it's a definition of AI. If your fridge telling you need milk, or a billion trillion records being processed on Facebook to tell you that when you post a picture, Facebook knows who it is. They know when you last spoke to them. They're listening to your conversation. It depends on state-sponsored nefarious activities and organizational-led, maybe not so nefarious, but just as problematic issues. How many people say my phone listens to me? These kinds of questions, I think, are fundamental to understanding what it means to look at what AI means to so many different people and how we start to respond to them. So a very difficult question then, Azri.
Sure. Thank you so much, Andrew. I think we're not looking for the perfect answers, but your sharing certainly has given a new level of dimensions along with Busi and Farah. Charles, a final note on your views on this.
Yes, I have gone through that, the manual validation when I first become an audit trainee. My first lesson learned from the boss. The boss says, never trust anybody, number one. Number two, every documentation must go through from cradle to grave. So I went through that in a manual way. I know how painful it is, and I sit down and I have one whole stack of documents that I do nothing else but to do vouching and vouching. So today, with AI, yes, life of an auditor is much easier, but that doesn't mean that using AI will solve all your problems. AI give you the tools, give you the mechanism to trace the crooks, but they give you indicator. But at the end of the day, it is the human being who will use the recommendation from the AI to investigate and to probe. Because the report doesn't probe, the report gives you an indicator. And so that is why the auditor's job is getting more and more powerful, and AI gives them the empowerment. So if you're an auditor, you should be very happy because AI enhance you. AI make you more valuable than ever before, because at the end of the day, you still need a human being, a human touch to make the final decision and to make a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Farah. Thank you, Busi and Andrew. You guys have been fantastic. The time is so, we missed the time. We exceeded by quite a bit, but still a sizable number of the audience is still around. But we like to thank you because the questions are coming fast and furious. I know that there's more questions from Terminator type of questions to other sort of imaginative and creative questions, but our team will make the recording link available, and you can basically request from them, and we'll be happy to share these conversations to all of you via email, and this has also gone live on the Facebook and LinkedIn or something like that, I was told. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for spending your time past the stipulated ending time, simply because the discussions has been so dynamic and so forthcoming, and everybody is like contributing quite a bit of their expertise into this. Rest assured, this won't be the last session. So we will be running more of such valuable webinars from valuable speakers like the panelists that you see here. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good dinner, lunch, or breakfast, wherever you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Can we have a quick
Yes.
photo session? Yeah. Since everybody is like live and background is so nice and everything.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Again, ready? 1, 2, and 3. One
Thank
more.
you, speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will let the platform run in the next 10 minutes. If you like to have any questions with any of the speakers, please, speakers, share your contact details, emails, whatnot, connect with anybody, and we let the session run in the next 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, thank you so much once again. Bye, everyone.